While traveling through Cidaris, Geralt of Rivia planned to spend some time in countryside villages where there was ample work opportunities for a witcher. But after his companion, the poet Dandelion, started a tavern fight with a group of rangers, they were arrested, lost all their coin to pay the fine, and were forced to flee for fear of retribution, leaving them to visit the nearby city of Bremervoord, where work was far more scarce. In order to sustain themselves, Geralt sold a gold signet, while Dandelion parted with an Alexandrite hair brooch. But at last, they made it to the seaside realm, and landed a contract with their ruler Duke Aglaval. Joining him on an expedition to sea, Geralt acted as a translator between the Duke and his love, the beautiful mermaid Shinaz. Although they did not speak the same language, they often met on the rocks, saying nothing but somehow understanding each other and falling in love. Wanting to move their relationship forward, the Duke was informing her that he spent 2 pounds of pearls on a magic elixir, which would allow her to grow legs after only 3 days of suffering. But the idea repulsed her and she declined, instead saying she knew a sea witch, which could give him a handsome tail with no pain at all. With the Duke equally outraged, the Witcher tried to argue it was not the same thing, because humans could not breathe underwater, while mermaids could breathe air. But Shinaz would not hear it and accused Aglaval of being selfish, saying love demands sacrifice, and that for her to have his children, he must grow a tail and become a spawner so she can deposit her eggs. With neither side giving in, the mermaid lost her temper and told the Duke to dry up before departing, which Geralt translated as "go drown yourself." Refusing to let her go, the Duke ordered his men to capture her by force, but Geralt warned them she was not alone, and a kraken may be underneath them. Blaming the Witcher for their failure, the Duke refused to pay his wage, and so that evening, both Geralt and Dandelion were looking at another night of hunger. Fortunately, the spice merchant and dean of the local guild, Teleri Druard, recognized the poet and asked him to play as the second bard for his daughter's betrothal party. Outraged that he would be a second to anyone, Dandelion was about to refuse, but Geralt asked him to make a little sacrifice, and in exchange, he would stop refusing Witcher contracts out of principle and take the next one offered. Arriving at the party, they heard the voice of the other singer, Miss Essie Davin, a longtime friend of Dandelion he viewed as a little sister, who was nicknamed Little Eye because of her beautiful starry eyes. After being introduced to the Witcher, Aglaval arrived, and so Essie tried to start a conversation by mentioning the rumors surrounding the Duke and his mermaid lover. But Geralt was sensitive to this sort of gossip, as his relationship with Yennefer became a source of conversation for many across the continent, and so he lashed out and offended the bard to the point she walked away from them, leaving the Witcher feeling embarrassed and guilty. Duke Aglaval then approached, wanting to hire the Witcher once more, this time to investigate the disappearance of 7 sailors in an area called the Dragon's Fangs. Since the ship was found intact but covered in blood, they suspected a sea monster, and as a result, their people were refusing to leave the harbor, hurting trade and the Duke's pearl diving business. Despite not being paid for the last job, the Witcher remembered his promise to Dandelion and accepted the contract. Turning their attention to the party, Dandelion performed and flirted with girls, while Geralt ate as much as he could, watching Essie from the corner of his eye. After she finished singing, she appeared to snidely dismiss a man who approached her, embarrassing him with her words. Given his history with women, and Yennefer in particular, Geralt had a deeply cynical view on love and intimacy, and so started to form an idea in his mind about the type of girl Essie was, and when she slipped out of the room onto a terrace, he followed to apologize for his earlier comments. Accepting his apology, they briefly spoke about her love for the sea, and Geralt started to sense that she was interested in him, seeming to confirm his suspicions that she was curious about him and what it would be like to lay with a mutant. Believing she would therefore be easy to get into bed, he suddenly grabbed her by the waist, pulled her close, and went for a kiss. At first, she was startled and hesitant, but ultimately gave in for a moment before extracting herself from his arms and turning away. It was at this moment Geralt realized he made a mistake. Instead of seeing curiosity and lust in her eyes, he saw sincerity and confusion. When she asked why he did it, Geralt felt so ashamed he could not answer. Trying to lighten the mood, Essie claimed she was not upset and asked him to come inside so she could sing him a song. Sharing a room, Geralt and Dandelion spoke later that night, with the poet quickly deducing that Geralt acted improper and now regretted it, but consoled him with the fact that if Essie had truly been upset, she would have punched him in the face. Dandelion then explained that while the Witcher's mutations made him different on the outside, on the inside he was as ordinary and boring as any other human. To the poet, it was clear that the Witcher's bad experiences with Yennefer led him to assume the worst in potential romantic partners, but Essie was special and would not play those same games. The next morning, Essie Davin met Geralt on the shore, wanting to tag along on his investigation into the sea monster, and to his surprise, the girl was quite knowledgeable on the subject. Aglaval then arrived, soaking wet after waiting 3 hours for the mermaid who never came. Unleashing his anger upon the Witcher, he yelled and made threats, demanding he finish his investigation. Angered by his words, the bard jumped to the Witcher's defense, claiming she was a friend to the King of Cidaris and could arrange for the Duke to face public humiliation through her songs. When the embarrassed ruler then departed, Essie expressed her admiration for the White Wolf, but he tried to dissuade her of any poetic notions, saying he was a cold killer who hunted monsters and followed a code, regardless of the moral implications. She in turn made it clear that wasn't true, and hinted she knew about his tumultuous relationship with Yennefer. The mermaid Shinaz then arrived, furious to learn her duke left after only 3 hours of waiting, further proof he was unwilling to sacrifice. Turning her eye to Essie, she asked if this was the Witcher's beloved, but he quickly denied it, stating they barely knew each other. Essie then revealed she spoke the mermaid language, introducing herself, and later expressed annoyance with Geralt for how he described their relationship. Asking about the attack against the sailors, Shinaz merely stated they must stay away from that area of the sea before disappearing beneath the waves. Undeterred, the Witcher was joined by Dandelion during his mission to visit the Dragon's Fangs, with the poet spending his time searching for pearls among seashells, hoping to find a present for Essie's upcoming birthday. Arriving at their destination, they found an underwater stairway possibly leading to the fabled city of Ys, home of the fish people. Hearing an underwater bell, the Witcher was then attacked by a fish person wielding a sword. After an intense fight in which Geralt nearly died so Dandelion could escape, the mermaid Shinaz intervened and held back the attack long enough for Geralt to flee. After tending to his wounds and listening to the story, Essie found a blue shell with a rotting mollusk inside, which Dandelion picked up for her, but he was so embarrassed he declared Geralt got it for her before quickly departing. The Witcher apologized and tried to take it away, but she would not give it up and instead opened it to clean out the contents, only for a beautiful blue pearl to fall out of the shell. Though she immediately wanted to give it back to them, Geralt insisted she keep it as the gift they intended. Unfortunately, Essie misread the situation and threw herself at his lips, only to be coldly rejected with a kiss on the cheek. Though disappointed, she could no longer hold back her feelings, and confessed she was completely in love with him, comparing her feelings to a magical enchantment. Knowing his romantic history, she expressed hatred for Yennefer, as it was the witch's fault he was not able to return her feelings. But to all this, Geralt stayed silent, knowing that what she said was true, as he was in love with the sorceress and always would be. He then came to the realization that this must be how Yennefer felt when she was with the Witcher. Just as Geralt was not capable of returning Essie's feelings, Yennefer was incapable of returning what he felt, and so rather than hate her, he should appreciate that she made a small sacrifice by allowing him into her life. When Essie stopped talking and cried in silence, he wanted to hug and kiss her, even lay with her if necessary, a small sacrifice to calm her down, but instead, he suggested she take the blue pearl and set it in a silver flower to wear on a chain around her neck, much like his wolf's medallion. She liked the idea, as it was the jewel she was given instead of love, and so it might bring her luck. The next day, Geralt met Aglaval and warned him that the fish people attacked the sailors because they were defending the entrance to an underwater city. Since this did not solve the problem, the Duke determined this an unsatisfactory result and again refused to pay the Witcher's wage. He then stated armed guards would now accompany those who made their living from the sea, effectively declaring war against the fish people, and even offered the White Wolf a high-ranking position in his army. When he refused the job, Aglaval began with the insults, only for an outraged Essie to once again leap to the Witcher's defense, claiming he was a better man than the Duke, and so could not be bought or offered work beneath his dignity. She then issued a final warning that the sea was large, mysterious, dangerous, and not a place for humans. But Aglaval disagreed, saying that regardless of how many years or generations it took, humans would conquer the seas and extract its wealth, just as they were doing with the land. Nothing could stand in the way of their domination over this world, and it was the Witchers who led the way for this slaughter by clearing the continent of monsters who threatened their expansion and progress. Yet as they spoke, the doors to the room suddenly flew open, and to the astonishment of all, Shinaz, the mermaid, walked in wearing a dress, which she lifted to show off her new legs. Falling to his knees, the Duke expressed his devotion, and she simply replied by saying what kind of love would it be if she were not willing to make a little sacrifice. With the Duke and Mermaid seeming to get their happy ending, Essie, Dandelion, and Geralt departed the city together, enduring tensions and awkward silences until the female poet could contain herself no longer and confronted the Witcher, who realized this was the moment to make a little sacrifice, but still could not and remained silent. Having enough of their nonsense, Dandelion at last intervened and admonished them both for acting like fools. Essie was asking something of Geralt which was clearly impossible, and the Witcher in turn was refusing to address her feelings at all. Saying they needed to settle the issue, the poet demanded they speak honestly with each other, try to empathize, and finally have an intimate night together, if for no other reason than to get it out of their system. Dandelion then left to go fishing, and having been thoroughly chastised, Geralt and Essie held hands and had an earnest conversation before spending an intimate night together. The next day, they were all in high spirits and prepared a farewell dinner before going their separate ways. As they ate, drank, and sang together, the three experienced a night of honest happiness, and as Geralt laid back, listening to the beautiful music, the usual thoughts of Yennefer floated into his mind, but so too did thoughts of Essie, who soon squeezed in beside him and fell asleep. Dandelion, however, stayed up all night composing a ballad, this one about a witcher who fell in love with a poet, forging a bond so strong not even death could part them. It was a wonderful song, but it did not describe the truth of what occurred. It didn't talk about how after they went their separate ways, Geralt and Essie never saw each other again. Nor did he mention that Essie died 4 years later of smallpox in Vizima, with Dandelion carrying her body and digging her grave. He never even spoke about how she asked to be buried with only 2 of her possessions, the lute she used to play her songs, and the blue pearl from which she was never parted. Dandelion never changed the song, and neither did he play it for anyone, ever. Yet as he sang his ballad straight through to the dawn, a vicious, hungry werewolf heard his voice and approached the camp. Upon seeing it was only Dandelion, he listened for a moment before continuing on his way. Love The Witcher or any other series? Then why not check out Audible, where they have the largest collection of audiobooks available. Sign up now and get 1 free audiobook and 2 Audible originals, or else give the gift of membership to someone you know. If you prefer to read your stories, then click on the link to the Kindle Unlimited plan and get access to as many ebooks as you want. If you haven't already, be sure to check out the excellent Witcher audiobooks, narrated by Peter Kenny, including the main novels and short stories which accompany the series. A special thanks to all those who contribute to CivilizationEx, like Average Soul, Pete J. King, and Lady J. Book Nerd. If you'd like to help the channel, go to patreon.com/CivilizationEx, where you can sign up and gain early access to videos, vote on future content, and access the Patreon-only series, Heroes of Lore and Legend.